Welcome to Episodes from the Garage, the official, unofficial voice of the Elite Girls Rugby League. 11 teams from Connecticut to South Carolina and some of the best girls high school rugby in the States. Listen in for game recaps, stories, interviews, and more from in and around the EGRL. Episodes from the Garage is made possible with support from Basecamp 31, a New Jersey nonprofit that brings individuals and businesses together to invest in healthy community and personal development through shared human experience. And now, Episode 3.
All right, welcome everybody. Addendum 1A to Episodes from the Garage, and a special guest today, Jackie Finlan of the Rugby Breakdown with us this evening. We're going to be fielding questions and firing questions back. So having said that, why don't we start around the horn. Jackie, would you introduce yourself for the massive listening audience that we have?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm calling in from Oakland, California, which is the headquarters for the Rugby Breakdown, which is a news site that covers girls and women's rugby in the U.S. I have been running that site since 2016, but I've been reporting on rugby since 2005.
Bill Dobbs.
And Mike Eisenhart.
One half of Production O'Brien, behind the cameras, Chris O'Brien as well. We know you're from New Jersey, so originally from New Jersey, which proud to call you a rugby sister. Tell us how you found the game of rugby.
I was playing softball at my first college, and then when I transferred to the University of Arizona, needed a new sport. And as you know, rugby is one of those sports that you can pick up at any point in your life. So that was 2000. And I've been playing ever since. Came back to the East Coast, spent most of my time with the Village Lions, and then played for the Philippines a little bit, and then back out to the West Coast.
Wow, tell us a little bit about the Philippines.
Yeah, they got their sevens program started around 2010. And actually, my Village Lions teammate, Rosie Rao, and I, we were the first captains at the Asian Sevens Championships. And then went to Hong Kong to play in that auxiliary tournament, the Hong Kong Football Club there.
Yeah.
And I was as 30 at that point, so we pretty much had a year or two, and then had to move on from international sevens. But yeah, that was just a phenomenal experience to be there on the ground level.
You gave us a little bit of history and how you started reporting on the game. How did it start? What was the catalyst for you? What was your motivation?
Yeah, I was working at a mortgage newspaper on Long Island, and one of my rugby teammates wrote a story for Rugby magazine. And so as soon as I realized there was a Rugby magazine, I just submitted a resume and said, I will quit my job in 2 weeks if you have any openings.
Wow.
And it was sheer luck that the editors were turning over at the time. That was with the late Ed Haggerty in his Upper East Side home/office. And yeah, that was 2005, and that's really, the genesis there.
So it was just a shot in the dark and a gamble, and luck and timing meet, and here we are today.
Yeah, it really was luck. It was. I'm so thankful that it turned out that way. Yeah.
So were you at the Rugby magazine that whole time, or what? How did you go from where that start to where you are today?
I was with Ed for maybe a couple years before it started to evolve into the USA Sevens, that United World Sports entity that evolved with John Prusmack. So that Rugby magazine became part of a larger portfolio. That's how I met Alex Goff. That's how website reporting. That side of my, expertise started to develop. And then probably, 2014, that's when Alex Goff and I both, left to do website only reporting. And then I was with Alex for a little bit. And then in 2016, I was like, what, I want to see if, women's only, like a women's only reporting site could stand on its own.
Yeah, so kind of a follow-up to that. Favorite moment or moments since you've started your platform?
Yeah, there's so many. I mean, generally speaking, I love going to high school championships, mostly because they're so excited to talk to you and everything is new, and they just, they remind you why you're doing this. And, But probably one of the top moments has to be I don't know if you remember when the HSBC circuit used to come to Glendale in the U.S. It did it for a few years,
Sure.
and one of the last years, if not the second to last year, Elena Olsen scored this amazing try to beat France and move on to the final. And it was just, it's that intimate stadium. So
Yeah.
everybody was there, like basically running in that try with her. And it was, for a women's event, it was just very unique to experience. And then to be there on the sideline and be able to talk to her right afterwards. And she was just,
Electric,
bubbling.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
you
really
mentioned Glendale and Rugby Town, and it's like I think anybody in the United States, when you go there, it's like it feels like the home of USA Rugby, right? And to be there for an event like that is spectacular. If you could interview anyone, past, present, or future, in the women's game, who would that be, and why?
Well, let's see. I guess I wish I could have interviewed Kathy Flores when she wasn't a coach, like when she was still a player
Mm-hmm.
and in the middle of, really kind of establishing and leading the USA women. I loved interviewing her as a coach because she was so direct, and I always felt like she was kind of giving me a lesson on, these are the things you need to report on. But it would have been interesting to talk to her as a player and see how that kind of, like, if she was exactly the same way, or if she was a bit different as a player. I obviously knew Ed Haggerty as my boss, but he used to tell me the wildest stories about, playing rugby in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I wish too I could have seen him on the sideline and just been like, yeah, put some of these stories on the record.
Right. A couple tour stories from the 60s, yeah.
Back in the early 90s, we used to wait for that magazine to show up in the mailbox.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Couldn't wait.
Yeah. And then if your club was featured, it was even a
geez.
bigger deal, right? It was like, oh, my God.
bet.
I remember I was playing for Connecticut Yankees at the time. We had our 25th anniversary, and it was covered by your magazine, and we had the whole team picture in the clubhouse, and I still have the cutout framed in my basement. It's
that's
fading.
honestly, that's what I love. Like, you go to these clubhouses around the country and you'll see like a framed rugby magazine article like up on the walls. Yeah, it's great.
I don't know if you could fit those 50 guys in one frame anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody, half a body's getting cropped out.
Yeah, I think it
Maybe
might be
20.
a fold out. But fond memories nonetheless. So a little bit heavier question. Thoughts on the U.S. being 10 to 12 short years away from hosting both cups? What are areas that, particularly for us as youth coaches, like what are some things that you might be seeing that we need to address over that time period?
Yeah, I think this goes for a lot of sectors within rugby, and you can tell that people like, the EGRL are attempting to do this, but it feels like this huge disconnect. Like, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of people like doing a lot of work, but they're kind of doing it like next to each other,
In
not
silos,
with each other.
kind of.
Yeah, exactly. That's just something I've discovered as you're like talk to people and you realize people in the same state, like aren't working with each other. And I don't know if that's a simple fix. I feel like we need some kind of person in every state who is like connected at the youth, college, club level. Like, they're just, a hub of information, and they kind of can just be like, you two should talk, or you're holding this event, you should talk to this local youth club. Make sure this women's club shows up in their kit and talks to the girls afterwards to let them know there's opportunities out there. And just so that when you find this wonderful sport and you're committed to it, you understand that you're part of this huge network, and that when your playing days are over, there's so much you can do, and will be compelled to do.
I feel like that's a really eloquent way of saying we are really disorganized and disjointed.
Yeah.
I think it's a fair call out, right? It's like, if I think about like the five of us and what we've been doing, it's certainly a takeaway for us to say, how do we PR this a little bit better? But I think that's great feedback,
I think the way we're going, I think we came out of the silo.
I like the idea of saying, like, at some point a longer term vision that links all that up.
Yes.
I feel like rugby is one of those sports where we're so worried about just getting to tomorrow and just past tomorrow that we can't think about
So in the
years
moment,
down the pike,
yeah.
you know, because everything is often so fragile. I mean, we've talked about it on multiple episodes now with this idea of like, you know, the game is fragile, the youth game especially, and the youth girls game extra especially. So like a couple of things don't go our way, and I feel like
You're back to square.
yeah, it's kind of like you wipe the slate clean and start again. So because of that, it's like long-term planning is hard, and you're just trying to survive, not so much thrive.
Yeah. And don't let me discount what's happened in the past 18 to 24 months for certain, right? But I guess the way that I take that piece of advice is like, okay, we tripled in 18 months. How do we triple again?
Yeah.
To the power of what can we get this to? You know?
Yeah. Jackie, do you think that's pie in the sky, or is that like, is there an appetite for such a thing? Just to organize across age groups and, you know, have that liaisonship that you talked about, or, you know, that connector.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be kind of organized that way. Like it was all the different age grades, like all under the same kind of governance. So, you know, I think like when you went to the AGMs, like you would see these people from all the different, you know, high school through clubs. So I don't think that organization exists everywhere anymore. I mean, there are certain areas that do. I think like the Midwest does a pretty good job. Like they never actually got rid of their territorial union. But yeah, I don't think it's pie in the sky at all. I think.
I mean, 10 years seems like a long time away, but it's coming very quickly, 10, 12 years. And, you know, we're on the cusp of, Mike, I think you've said it before. It's like, do we want to be looked at, you know, 13 years from now, like, you blew it? Or do we want to be looked at like, you know, as a whole, right? As rugby in the United States, like, hey, well done. Big step was made. That sleeping giant is starting to come to life for real.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's fair. I would love to confidently say that like everyone's going to come together and say, look, this is an amazing opportunity. Let's figure out how to actually get there and feel successful and not feel like there's some risk of us going past it going, oh man, you missed it. Like
Yeah.
you get one shot at a double
Well, I
World
think
Cup.
that all
guys.
depends on who's leading that, which I have no idea who that is right now.
Right.
Yeah, there's definitely other entities asking those same questions. And I think like the Women's Premier League are really on the cusp of something. And when they talk about, you know, this goal of going professional, like they very much are talking about bringing the silos together and just kind of they're working through it right now. But their big plan is to, you know, not just care about their level. Like it's got to be looking above and below, and like, you know, like feeders and
Academies and
yeah.
yeah. Well, that's good to hear.
It is.
Well, yeah. So let's give you the mic if you have questions. I mean, we follow your publication. We think you do a great job. I mean, I know I'm going to speak for myself, but I kind of feel like everybody shares that opinion. It's super nice
Great.
to see somebody who's putting so much effort and time into the women's game at all levels. And I know that as a coach and dad, like the kids do hang on that. You know, they look for it, they read it, they love what you're doing. So a thank you, you know, before anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a labor of love. And I mean, I have great appreciation for the EGRL, like just starting with like the website and the access to information. I mean, it seems like it should be expected, but just having rosters with names and their grade, and like a schedule like that, I mean, that's really tough to, you know, there's maybe like I can think of like one or two other high school leagues that do it that well. So, I mean, that makes reporting on it super easy. So thank you for for that help. Year 1 to year 2 growth, like were you just looking to see how big you could get it, or did you have specific programs that you wanted to reach out to and get involved?
So we had pretty stringent criteria actually. So we didn't set out with growth in mind, I don't think. I think what really was our primary motivation was to really find the clubs who are playing at a high level and just connect with them at some level. You know, take away the geography and the finance and all the barriers that make it hard to seek out those teams and play them. And ultimately what we found was that there was little clusters, little pockets of teams that were really playing at a high level. And some of that's from our own experience. All of us coach for Morris. And so we're, bringing this high school team around and playing other teams. And we walk away saying, wow, that was a really good team. You know, I wonder if they have the same problem that we do, which is not getting really good games every week. You know, some weeks you get a great game, weeks you get a game where it just doesn't match up, and you're not sure that was a win for anybody. And so once you kind of put that out there and start talking to people, we found that the problem was pretty universal in these higher level teams. It just so happened that the executive board, which, as we've said a couple of times, I don't sit on it. Chris, who's kind of in the production seat, he's formally on the executive board. They put this great law, like kind of, in the bylaws that says, hey, you have to play a team to get in. Show that you can play competitively with one of the existing teams, and then and only then will you get an invite into the league so that we can keep the quality consistent. And that, I think, was a really good thing, and that's where the growth came from. It just so happened that this year, everybody that we invited after seeing year one said, yes, like we want to do that too. And so it grew rapidly. So that doubled the size of the league from 5 to effectively 11. And then, we have this other little pilot program we're working on, which is for the emerging teams, I
love this piece of it.
Which is, it's the teams that probably can't quite play at that level yet, but still could benefit from the platform and the organization and the exposure and all the things that seem to come with it. So we want to honor them and say, hey, come on in and let us help you, in whichever way the platform can. But at the same time, want to make sure we're balancing that with, let's get teams of equal abilities at some level playing each other and, sort of benefit from the competition.
So will this year be divided into like a north and south, and then maybe there'll be crossovers?
Yeah, exactly. So there's North, Central, and South. So 3 divisions. And each of them will play for the divisional, like, play-in, right? So if you win your division, you'll play into the 4 playoff spots. Then there'll be a wild card, the best of the remaining teams. And so that will be the semifinals and finals, which will be held in New Jersey, June 10th, 11th at the Mid-Atlantic Women's Rugby Showcase. So that is for just those divisional spots. Then what we've done is we've encouraged those crossover friendlies, like inter-divisional games, because that's what will help seed the wild card. Mm-hmm. So how do you determine who's the best of the remaining? Like, who's the best of the rest? Well, it's head-to-head matchups and things like that that will sort of push teams to play cross-divisionally.
Very nice. And then, how about the evolution of the all-star team? How did that come about?
The select. So I'll let these guys kind of chime in on it. The basics are USA Rugby Performance Pathways. Martha Danes attended Mars last year because the U23 event was there. So the U23 was there at the same location, and I hope, I don't know, she's never said this, but I'm going to fill in some words there. I hope that she saw the level of play and said, wow, these kids can play. She reached out to us and said, there's this event that happens in February. Would you all consider putting in a team? And so, in grand e-GRL fashion, we kind of quickly huddled up and we're like, how do we pull this off? It's a great opportunity. And, 6-8 weeks later, we've got a team.
I think it was done over text message. What do you think? Everybody was yes.
Yeah. Probably the shortest question answer text message we've ever had. But yeah, it was pretty resounding. We should definitely do that.
Yeah, it's amazing we're not more financially successful in our own lives because the amount of time and attention we put into this and the entrepreneurship that's around it, it's like I love what we're doing, but I think I'm a failure in my career. But I guess you have to make room for rugby. So
that's very cool, though. So this event down in Florida, I'm sure it has also that adult element to it. The Midwest and the South are also going to play down there, and that's what I was like. Oh, I love these events that kind of, they connect. They form a little bridge to like what you could do next. So that's great. You're going down there.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to what you were talking about and breaking those silos even more so, right? It's like making that connectivity at a distance, and continuing to push the envelope there. It's invigorating for sure. I mean, it's like to have come, Bill, you said it, I think, whether it was the last cast or the one before, like there have been attempts at this before, but it was more like an invitational weekend. And hey, great. Teams from Canada came down, that kind of thing. But it never got further than that. And it always kind of felt like when the weekend was over, there was something missing.
Yeah.
So feeling good about the direction that we're taking it for sure. And if we can
Excited about it.
yeah, for
Yeah,
certain,
I'm
right?
very excited.
I mean, to me, and I know the table feels the same way, but when you say you're growing the game, you got to put your money where your mouth is, and I think that's what I really am, to borrow one of my Irish compatriots' terms, chuffed about, is the fact that we have this emerging component, and Mike, you've said it. It's like you can build these superstar teams and these superstar leagues, but then you end up alienating, that entry athlete, or that athlete that enjoys the game but maybe isn't ready to commit at that level. It's like this, I think, keeps that door open and continues to grow the game, which to me is at the youth level, I think, is the most important thing.
Do you envision this being the league staying kind of an East Coast thing, or do you look down the line and hope it's replicated elsewhere?
Well, if I have my way, we will be across the whole United States.
World domination.
Yes. I have my vision. I don't know if I should share that or not, but
If you don't say it out loud, it can never happen.
okay.
right.
Well,
Speak it out.
my vision is we become the league for high school girls in the United States, and we have our little pods of teams that right now they play for divisionals, and then we have one big tournament for nationals from the league, and then that's just for the EGRL playing. Then for selects, what I would love to see is from those little pods, we get a select side from each region, West Coast, Midwest, South, North, whatever. And we have a tournament for that. We compete. And then from there, we pick the best players from that, a big pool of 40, 50 girls. And then we go on tour somewhere to get these girls even better. Go Ireland, UK, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. It doesn't matter where we go.
Big tournament in Portugal that we're already aware of and have been to.
Yeah, where we
and-
got smoked.
Well, it's because we were playing select sides, right? And we
Right.
went as a club, and hats off to those athletes that we took there, because that was a punch up, and we were playing some tough sides. But I suspect, and we've said it, casually, but I think we can say it with more oomph, that this EGRL select side could go over there and do better than a good showing.
Yeah, we hope. I mean, we're going to find out in a month, right? We'll have a really good first test in a month, but I feel really positive about the athletes, and about who's, the commitment level and the excitement, by the families. I think, that's the exciting part about the sport, is that it's getting to that moment where you kind of feel almost like there's an inflection point coming, and obviously the World Cup helps. But the athlete, the level of commitment to the sport, the excitement seems to be ratcheting up. And so if we don't find a way to give some outlet to that energy, we're going to miss it. And so I think that this is another really great step. And who knows, a year from now we could say that was a failed experiment. I don't know, but
Hey, we tried.
yeah, but it feels good right now. I mean, I do feel like it's going in the right direction.
Well, great. I think this is like a really exciting kind of competition, and I'm so glad to see it keep pushing and expanding. It's just, I wish I was closer so I could see it all in person.
Well, that's a good goal for us this year. So keep June 10th, 11th penciled in. We'll see if we can figure out something, because it'd be cool to have you out.
It's only a 6-hour
An East Coast visit,
Having been to a handful of the identification camps and now practice, I'm bullish. I think the talent pool that's there is pretty darn strong, and I'd venture to say go ahead and take a shot at the EGRL and see what you got.
Yeah.
It's bold. That's a bold statement there.
You just called all the other teams out. Gee,
That's right. Politely, of course. I'm looking forward to seeing you all.
Way to get after it, Steph.
Steph Alaprande.
Hey, head coach, how do you feel about that? Where's your?
I wish you would just shut up
I'll
right
be
now.
behind the mic.
Curious if any of the state competitions, if they've said it's been difficult to schedule teams, or if there is any talk about where nationals fits in, like high school club nationals.
So there has not been any real hard pushback from the state-based organizations, and some of that might be because of all the states that are now represented, 7 or 8 of them, whatever it is. there's really only one state-based organization, Pennsylvania, which is a really like tightly run schedule. Almost all of the others have like a lot of flexibility because there either aren't that many teams or they can kind of move things around, or in the case of like, in the Carolinas, like some of the folks that are entering the EGRL are sitting on those boards. And so everybody's been pretty open to working with each other. Here in New Jersey, it's not a problem because, we win the states by existing. So that means that, for us, we're going to go find that competition anyway. But yeah, we have made it pretty clear, I think, to the clubs that if you get us your information early, we will schedule around those needs. Like we are not trying to compete with any of the organizations out there. We're trying to be complementary and just really push the bar higher. We really, I think, universally everybody, and this is not just the guys on the call now, it all of the teams, all of the coaches seem to be really cognizant of this idea that we need to continue to push this thing forward and use every lever that we have. And good quality competition between successful clubs is a really good one. And so everybody's tried to work well together, and it's gone well.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that coin, to be fair to the conversation, is that EGRL was born of that problem, right? Of the state-based organizations, and no offense to any of them, right? There's a lot of heavy lifting that goes on there, but it just seems that the high school girls game, it's been a harder lift to get it moving, and I know that was a struggle.
Almost like a second thought.
In some instances, maybe we're being a little sour grapes about it, but yeah, I guess. But it's, I think we're at the EGRL today and what it looks like because of a gap in certain state-based organizations, not for a lack of trying, but just for whatever the pressures are. And
that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it was a need.
Yeah. It was a need, and we're working on fulfilling that need. But to your point, doing it officiously and honestly, in again to continue to overuse a term to grow the game. Yeah.
And then the other part of your question was nationals. So we've had some conversations. I know that Morris has attended nationals multiple times, and we plan to again this year.
Yes, plan on going.
And so I don't necessarily see it as a conflict. I hope at some point it may be complementary, because that would be a really, really cool vision. If there really was a true national event where groups came from every direction. It seems very regional because of travel or whatever it might be. It depends on the year and who shows up. And there seem to be like a few clubs that are always there, and then a few kind of we went one year, didn't go the next sort of thing. So who knows? Who knows where that conversation could go? I know, Dobbs, you've had a couple of conversations, with some of the folks who are helping organize or have organized and been on that committee. I mean, it's an open conversation on our end, I think, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, like you said, we're planning on going. It's on our schedule. Where is it? Warren Wilson College, I believe it is, in Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah, week before Memorial Day weekend. Right.
Yeah, it's like 19th, 20th, I think.
So I'm just been going by emails I've been getting. I don't know who's planning on attending. I really very little information so far.
Oh, the only other thing I was curious about is EGRL is all 15s?
Yes. Yeah. Strictly 15s. That was probably one of the stronger elements of discussion initially, was, well, what happens if your roster size slips a bit and you can't field, 15 on any given day? How's that going to work? And, thankfully the clubs all kind of held strong and said, well, obviously everybody's going to work with each other, but not below 12s. Mm-hmm. This is not a 10s or 7s effort. This is 15s.
And that's part of the issue of why the league initially kicked off, because there was teams who were playing in their state-based organizations and practicing 15s, showing up to their state-based game, and the other team had 10 players they wanted to play 7s. Mm-hmm. So here the bigger team, who's in the EGRL, one of them or two of them, had 20-something players, and they have to play 7s. Mm-hmm. And they were really getting nothing out of it.
Right.
And, of course, everybody's frustrated. And
it's a different game.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest thing, right? And I mean, that's been kind of the feedback in a very positive way from a lot of the larger colleges, you know, those who are now recruiting and many that are NIRA varsity, those kinds of things. You know, it's like, hey, it's nice that we're getting to see some 15s and some of these players. It kind of blew my mind, to be honest with you, when I met some of my daughter's colleagues and their parents, and they're like, oh yeah, my child was recruited to play. She's never played 15s. And I'm like, wow, how is that even a thing? And it was like, yeah, she's a great sevens player.
US,
but, you know, like, yeah, it kind of like, I had to sort of take and think about that a little bit. It was weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, plenty of opportunity to play sevens in the U.S. and good for that, right? Because that's a code of the game. You're growing the exposure of the game, but this is truly a dedicated 15-a-side league where, to your point, collegiate coaches get to see what the tight 5 can do, what the tight 3 can do, what, you know, the open side flanker's doing, you know, how tough that 8 is. You know, it's that's an important component, and I'm glad that we're giving a platform to it.
All right, well, listen, have a great night. Thanks so much for jumping on with us. It's been good to chat with you.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right, have a great
Thank
night.
you.
Go Eagles.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Episodes from the Garage, the official, unofficial voice of the Elite Girls Rugby League. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Elite Girls Rugby League and follow us on Instagram at Elite Girls Rugby. Special thanks to our guest, Jackie Finlan, our producers, Team O'Brien, Bravo the Dog for a cameo contribution, Brian Ahern, and of course, our wives and daughters who entertain our crazy ideas and continue to associate with us respectively.
I am Iron Man.